Thank you, Nadav. Everybody are here. Let's wait 1 minute. Nobody's outside? Good. Okay. So, Mishka said in his presentation that he was in the army and they taught him to never be first or last. I was in the army as well. They taught me that as well, and somehow I'm first and last today. Yeah. So anyway, it's the last session for today, right? So bear with me. We really try to make this one interesting, and I'm going to start with one secret that I'm going to share and one request from you guys. The secret is that the name of the presentation is The Truth About Hyper-Casual, and we don't really know what's the truth about hyper-casual, but we did invest a lot of research and a lot of time to give you valuable data that hopefully will help all of us to better understand this phenomena, its sustainability, its potential cannibalization over other categories, and many questions that we'll try to answer. That's my secret, and the request is that Nadav came to me before the presentation and he told me, listen, it's the last presentation for today. Please ask. I want people to still be excited and to participate. Ask as many questions as you can. So I went away and I rewrote the presentation into kind of like a question and answers format. It all happened in 10 minutes in the break, to a question and answers format. And what I'm asking you, I promise I have all the answers, but try also to answer the questions because all of us want to make Nadav happy. And it's the last session for today, and I'm going to start. So the truth about hyper-casual, and everything will be based on the big questions, and we'll try to answer them together. So the first question is, how big is it? Okay? It's hard to predict, right? Mishka spoke about it. It's hard to predict because if you go to App Annie, they give you IAP revenue, right? But we know also ad revenue. Right, and we have all of this data. So we went to App Annie, we did a lot of calculations, we took our own ad revenue data and we did a lot of calculations, and we tried to answer the first question that nobody really knows of how big is hyper-casual. So let's start. There are around 100 million game installs a day. Okay, that's from App Annie, 100 million game installs a day. The top 30 games, this obviously changes, but the top 30 games in September generated 13% of the total installs. So it's 13 million installs, right, a day generated by the top 30. Hyper-casual right now, or in September, if we're looking at number of installs, represents 62% of the top 30 games by number of installs. That's 8 million installs a day, hyper-casual from the top 30. And now the complicated part, we try to take this top 30 and get to an overall number. And we had some very smart people sitting on the formula, and this is what we got to. We got to that today, hyper-casual generates around 22 million installs a day. Okay, so that's by number of installs. I know it's insane, you're nodding your head. So that's by number of installs, right? And then we also know what's the average lifetime value for an or ARPU, right? For a hyper-casual user. So then we did an estimation that the market size of hyper-casual, it's somewhere between $2 to $2.5 billion of annual revenue run rating. Okay, so if we're taking approximately what's done right now, that's the market size. Obviously, that's an insane number. And that's the answer to the first question of how big is it? How fast has it grown? But when did hyper-casual start, or who started, or how fast has it grown? I'm going to open it to answers in a bit later. This is more of the data part. So if you're looking at the top charts, right, let's take September 2016, September 2017, and September 2018. In September 2016, 25% of the top 23 games were hyper-casuals. Okay, surprisingly, in September 2017, only 20% of top 23 games were hyper casual, so we're not seeing a growth between 2016 and 2017, but look what happened in 2018. So if you're looking at September 2018, 60% of the top 23 games are hyper casuals, right? And this is mind-blowing. You can see the growth between 2016, 2017, and 2018. What changed? Why? Why suddenly in 2018, 60% of the installs are from hyper casuals? It's growing like crazy. What do you think changed within the industry? And remember, Nadav really wants you to participate. Guess. I'll give you a hint, okay? There is one, let's call it an external reason, like users' behavior. Something changed in the way that users are consuming or playing games. And one is something which is more of an internal, and we actually spoke about it today. Okay, we actually, when we said about one of the things that changed, one of the trends are the answer to this. Nadav, you know the answer?
I don't remember. I can guess.
You can guess?
Creatives?
Creative, maybe. I'll speak about it soon. Maybe it's one of the answers. Anybody else? What do you think changed? Yeah? UA strategy, what do you mean? Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So you're both kind of right. So the first thing that changed, and this is before we dive into UA or to creative, is the user's behavior. And this is a survey, right, that we took from users. And how do users play mobile games? I don't remember the name. I think it was Ilana is here. She remember we have the exact research company, but it was a very big research that measured how do users play or when do they play games. And what you can see is that primarily, right, they're playing games. This is the gray one is adults, and the blue, I'm slightly colorblind. Is this blue? Yeah. And the blue, I'm joking. And the blue is teens, okay? So you can see that the number one category is at-home multitasking, right? So they're playing a game while they're watching TV or they're doing something else, right? The second one is waiting for something or someone, right? So the same idea, I'm waiting for someone and now I'm playing a game. The third one is transportation. The fourth one is taking a break. The fifth one is in the bathroom, right? And in all of these experiences, users increasingly looking for low commitment entertainment to be enjoyed in short bursts of time. Okay, so when you're looking on the market level, before even diving into UA, this is the main reason, and this is the shift that we're seeing towards gamers looking for these low commitment entertainment, and hyper casual exactly fits the trend that we're seeing here. And then the second one, which is what you guys said, is that hyper casual games cracked ROI positive UA at scale, right? Because if you're looking at the older days of hyper casual, right, when we look at it, when Ketchup were one of the only players out there, hyper casual usually they only get traffic when they launch new applications, right? The installs were organic, and then they were using it to cross promote other applications, but they didn't do UA. Hyper casuals didn't do UA up until probably a year ago when we're speaking about doing UA at scale. And what changed here is exactly what you guys said, which is the creative capabilities. Okay, so this is basically the equation that is based on why hyper casual is such a big thing today. So let's take a casual game, right? And let's take a hyper casual game. When we're looking at the casual game, the average bid, and again, it's average global, right? The average bid would be around $5, and the average IPM would be around 4. Okay, that's generate an eCPM of $20. That's one. Okay, when we're looking at hyper casual, the average bid is around 0.5, so it's 10th the bid, but the average IPM, it's not exactly average, but it's a good IPM, the average plus IPM would be around 40. And that's also generate $20 eCPM. An IPM of 40, IPM is installs per 1,000 impressions, right? IPM of 40 is only possible because of everything we're seeing with creative innovation and playables and interactive end card, right? And everything around it, interactive ads, they are the ones that for hyper casual, they're creating these kind of IPMs. And this is what made hyper casual not only competitive, but one of the highest eCPM generators in the ecosystem today. And we're gonna compare them very soon to other categories. But the user's behavior of low commitment entertainment combined with what we're seeing here are the two main reasons of what changed, and I think that it's still changing, right? I think it's even going to get more and more. So this is a good one. Has hyper casual grown the in-app, in-game ad market as a whole, right? What do I mean? I mean, are there now new gamers that didn't play games before, and now they're playing games because of hyper casual, right? Because an hyper casual game, right, basically addresses almost all of the users. It doesn't only addresses gamers, right? I think that Mishka, you said that anyone with a finger can play hyper casual. It's not my quote, but it basically addresses a very, very, very wide audience, right? And the question is, do we have now new gamers that we can potentially convert them also to non-hyper casual games? What do you think? Guess. Yes. Why? Because bigger market, right? So we've first of all we have a philosophical answer, and then it was a very hard task. We actually have a proof and a percentage of what's the number of the new gamers. At least we think. Okay. So a philosophical answer would be that if we're looking at, I don't know, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, what was the available pool of in-game inventory? I'm a game developer, or you guys more are game developers. You wanted to do UA, you would first go to Facebook, Google, and then you would go to video networks, and these video networks, their ad impressions will be mainly based on mid-core or AAA or casual publishers, right, who had a limited amount of ad views because it was never their main monetization, right? Those guys are monetizing primarily on IAP, maybe an 80-20 split toward ads. With IAP was an average one, so this was the available pool of inventory, and what we're seeing today is this, right? We have these whirlpools of inventory of companies like Voodoo, Quali, Legendary, and many more, that the amount of impressions that they generate can even surpass what Facebook is generating and many others, and the time spent of users on these games is obviously very, very high. So theoretically, that would mean that the answer to my question is absolutely yes, but nobody cares about theory, so let's see numbers. So what did we do? This is a 2 years based off analysis, and we took a small panel of 2.5 billion users. Okay, so 2.5 billion users. We saw that 660 million of them are now playing hyper casual. Okay, out of these 660 million users, we saw that 520 million users are users who are playing both hyper casuals and in a purchase games, right? Out of these 520 million users, we saw that 101 million users first played hyper casual. Okay, so the first game ever that they played were hyper casual, and only after they were playing hyper casual, they now installed an IAP game and started playing other games, right? So basically from this, we see that 20% new gamers came from hyper casual. Okay, again, 20% of the users who had both hyper casual and non-hyper-casual games, right, or IAP games, first played hyper-casual and only then moved to IAP games. Yeah. Yes, so see how calculated we are. The one not sitting next to you, but the other one here is Amir. Yeah? Yeah, she asked, how do we know? She asked, how do we know that these users were first playing hyper casual, right, before they were playing other games, right? How do we know? And I planted Amir next to her, right? And Amir leads all of our performance and all of our BI, and we spent a lot of time on researching this. And Amir, you can briefly say, how did we find this?
Yeah, so the main thing is that a network like us, so we don't have a visibility into the user ID, so this is based on device ID, right? So obviously if a user has also an iPad and he played another game, so yeah, it's not in this data. Okay, but this is how the networks are, the entire optimization is based on the device ID, obviously, and it's very, very close to the truth. That's why Omer said at the beginning, that's, at least that's what we, that's like our numbers, our data that we see, okay?
Yeah, this is how we understand it, exactly. Okay, so we now know that we have new users. We know that the market grew. By the way, it obviously makes sense, right? That the market grew, especially with ad impressions. Obviously, there are a lot more ad impressions being shown. Now, let's think about what's the quality of the new inventory, right? So maybe we have a lot more impressions, but the quality is low, right? Maybe it's irrelevant for non-hyper-casual advertisers. Maybe it's only relevant to do hyper-casual on hyper-casual, right? What do you guys think? What do you feel? You guys are buying, obviously you're buying also a lot of traffic on hyper-casual as well. What are you seeing as the quality compared to non-hyper-casual? Lower? Lower? Yeah, right. So let's see. So first of all, before we think about the quality, let's analyze these users. And what we did is we tried to find the best metric in order to understand. And first we measure how many video ads, we're speaking about video ads, how many video ads a DAO, right, not only based on impression, based on DAO. We took impressions and engagement and usage rate and got to DAOs, right? So how many video ads a DAO sees in each of the category. And what we're seeing is that in hyper casual, right, if you're calculating per DAO, we'll see he's seeing 4.8 video ads, right, a day compared to all of the other categories. So the first conclusion when we're trying to answer this question is that these users are seeing more, if we're calculating per DAO, right, they're seeing more video ads compared to other categories. So this is the first answer in the funnel. The second one, which is more important, is that hyper-casual users, right, install 10x more apps when we're looking at all categories of advertisers. And now we're speaking about per 1,000 DAOs. So if I'm a hyper-casual developer and I have 1 million DAOs, okay, it means that I am generating 80,000, because this is 80 per 1,000 DAOs, I'm generating 80,000 installs, right, for other games. That's the number, and see it compared to all of the other categories, right? So it's 10x the installs of other applications that hyper-casual users are generating. Now, if we're looking at hyper-casual users, and we're taking out hyper-casual advertisers. So we're only looking at IAP advertisers on hyper-casual supply. Look at the number of installs, right? So even if I am an IAP advertiser, the amount of installs I can get from hyper-casual supply is 5x when we're looking at comparing to number of DAO compared to the other categories. Now, even if the quality, if we compare one to one, even if the quality is lower, this means that this is a huge opportunity for IAP advertisers to generate a lot of new users and a lot of installs. And now it's all a matter, or it's all a question of how do you do it effectively? What do you need to adjust? Maybe you need to adjust your bids, maybe you need to adjust your creatives, but it works and it converts very well, not only for hyper casuals, this new traffic, but also for IAP and all advertisers. So who's mainly benefiting from the market growth, right? So we're saying the market is growing. There are a lot more of in-game impressions. These impressions are generating a lot more views in average. So it's another factor on the growth of the market. Now, who's winning these views? Is it mainly the hyper casuals on hyper casuals? Is it maybe primarily cross promotion? Somebody said something about Lion and Eplavin are mainly cross promoting between themselves. Is it IAP? So who's winning this market growth? And here is what we're seeing from January till now. Okay. The light blue line is IAP advertisers. This is hyper casual supply. Okay. This is IAP advertisers. Obviously, at the beginning, there was a whirlpool of new supply. Who won it at first? IAP. Okay, IAP advertisers were taking most of this new inventory, and the red one is hyper casual. The purple one are brands, right? So you can see that brands, they're steadily there. They didn't went all in yet, but they're steadily there, and they're getting to know this traffic. But what you're really seeing is a trend. And the trend is that you're seeing that hyper casual is gradually taking more of the more inventory on hyper casual, right? And when we're saying hyper casual, we're taking into account both cross promotions and other hyper casual and hyper casual. But by the way, even if we're looking at today, we can still see that even though hyper casual is bigger, IAP is still a big part of the inventory on the hyper casual supply. The inventory one on the hyper casual supply, but this is currently the trend. Now, if we want to look deeper into the trend, what we're also seeing is that hyper casuals are also growing on non-hyper casual supply. Okay, so hyper casual, so if we're looking at, again, if you're looking at hyper casual supply, we are seeing how hyper casual are growing really fast on the account of IAP. But if we're looking at non-hyper casual supply, we are seeing IAP dominating, but this is, you can see the increase of what hyper casual are winning also on non-hyper casual supply. The question, right? Will hyper casual be the hot topic at Gamefest 2019? What do you think? Sorry?
It seems to be yes, right? I mean, that's the direction of it. Although the earlier presentation seems quite similar.
Yeah. I'll tell you the challenge with the sustainability of hyper casual, and then we'll speak about what needs to happen in order for it to be sustainable or not to be sustainable, right? The challenge is that, let's say that there were only hyper casual games on Earth, right? If all of hyper casual was sold, let's say that all of hyper casual supply was sold to hyper casual demand, that's something that cannot exist, right? Because this is arbitrage. Users are moving from one game to another. There is no money being generated, right? I'm speaking about hyper casuals who are 100% ads, right? No money is being generated. It's obviously just moving users from one game to another, right? So, and today, when we're freezing September, right, what are we seeing? We're seeing that 60% of the inventory is sold to other hyper casuals. Let's say that about a quarter of it is cross promo, right? That it's cross promo within the same publisher, but it doesn't matter for what we're checking right now. 30% is IAP and 10% is brands, and this is what makes right now the economy sustainable. And the future of this economy is heavily dependent whether IAP will be able to effectively buy on hyper casual, to learn how to buy in a better way on hyper casual, right? Whether through creatives, through different optimizations, through understanding, like when you first bought on Facebook, right? Facebook users behave differently than users that you're buying somewhere else, and you know how to buy them. You know what's the creative, you know what to expect with the behavior after the install, you know everything. So IAP needs to adjust in order to make this sustainable and enjoy the growth of impressions. And what we think that also will happen is brands. Because hyper casual, we tried, but we don't have the exact data. But our assumption is that a lot of the time spent today of users is going through playing these type of games, right? So for the and it's a massive wide audience. So for the brands, right, that's a very strong category to go into aggressively. So if brands will understand that, and if IAP will know how to better buy on hyper casual supply, then it can be a win-win-win for everybody, because the market is growing, everybody's going to enjoy it, and this will be sustainable. If the trend that we're seeing here is actually going to increase, so this trend actually jeopardize the sustainability of the industry, because if it will be mainly hyper casuals on hyper casuals, it's not going to exist for long. So what are the keys for market sustainability? We said IAP and brands buying more hyper casual available inventory by using the right methods. It's a lot about creatives, right? Think about a mid-core game or a casual game that is now buying on hyper casual, but not using your regular creatives that are generating 5 IPM, by building a creative which is very similar to a hyper casual creative, right, and generating 40 IPM and playing the same game, right? So merely by adjusting creatives to be hyper casual alikes, that can alone make a very big change. By the way, it's hardly been done yet. We are now working with a couple of big partners to help them do that, but it's a very big opportunity and a key for sustainability. We spoke about brands, and also, I think Mishka touched it, but also hyper casual improving their lifetime value once by better ad monetization, which is obviously what we're trying to do, and it's constantly improving, but also by generating revenue from IAP and subscription models, right? So these games, the majority of them generate the revenue from ads, but some of them and others are now also going into subscription and maybe deepening their games and adding IAP. Thank you.